Hello. We're going live. Woo, baby. Chrissie Mayr podcast live. It's fun. I like doing these live now. People can see it in real time. Thank you for joining us on this Friday afternoon. Welcome to the Chrissie Mayr podcast. You can hear us on iTunes, YouTube, Spotify, and SoundCloud. And if you're listening to us on iTunes right now, just go ahead and leave a 5-star review, please, and thank you. I would appreciate that very, very much. Quick shout out to my stand-up dates. You can see me do stand-up this weekend, this Saturday, tomorrow, in Morris Plains, New Jersey, Tiff's Ale House, the Dojo of Comedy, right on Speedwell Avenue. For tickets, go to ChrissieMayr.com. Would love to see you guys there. I love doing stand-up. And next weekend, next Friday, June 18th, I'll be in Bethel, PA with the Comedians of the Compound. We will be at the Garrett Amphitheater. And for tickets to that, you can also go to my website. And for all my upcoming stand-up dates, just check out my website, my social media. I'm going to be back on the Jersey Shore in July, and then in New Orleans in August, Vegas in September, and then back in Dallas, September 17th and 18th. So really excited to do stand-up for all you guys all over this country. Quick shout out to our sponsor, Cushy Dreams. They are my go-to for all things CBD products. I want to talk to you guys about Cushy Dreams. They offer a full lineup of premium smokable CBD. They specialize in extraordinary CBD-rich hemp flower, also known as bud in cans, and pre-roll CBD joints. Check out this website. Ba-bam! Here it is. I love it because it really helps me with my anxiety. I'm more into the joints. Like they do offer, like the straight up bud that you can stick in an apple, a bowl, if that's how you like to smoke it. I really like these 5-packs. It's very chic, very tidy. You can slip this in a pocket or a purse or whatever. It's 100% hand rolled, never machine rolled. They're constantly doing independent lab tests to ensure compliance and purity. Each batch is slow cured for 2 to 4 weeks to guarantee maximum freshness and preserve flavor and cannabinoids. And you can find all of this information on their website, cushydreams.com, Kushy dreams.com. You can enjoy all the health benefits of CBD without getting high. There's under 0.3% THC in all these products. It's cannabis that ships directly to you, and it's legal in all 50 states. Join the men and women who are sick of vapes and gummies and want to smoke their CBD. And best of all, it's grown here in the USA. Cushy Dreams has CBD flower and pre-rolls in indica and sativa blends like Energy, Hustle, Relax, Create, Dream. What is this music coming from? What is this? Oh, this is an ad. Great. Curveball. Okay. It's just like, it's one of these like news pop-up things. Good times, guys. All right, back to Cushy Dreams. Grown here in the USA. I really like the Hustle blend. It gives me a little bit of energy. But if you're somebody who likes a little bit of a smoke before bed, you can do one of the like Relax, Dream, Peace blends. So whatever you want to do with your day, Cushy Dreams has you covered, and it's grown here in the USA. So go to their website, cushydreams.com, and use promo code CMP. You're going to get 20% off every order. And I think free shipping as well. How exciting, guys. All right, enough of that. I'm so excited to have this guy here. He is an associate poli-sci professor at Kentucky State University. He's also the author of Hate Crime Hoax. So excited to have him here. Wilfred Reilly, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Doing good. I'm happy it's Friday. I'm so excited to talk to you. I want to hear all about, you have such an interesting background. I want to hear all about how you came to write this book, because, we've been hearing in the news for a while now. I think, Jussie Smollett was maybe the first kind of mainstream hate crime hoax. I don't know if that inspired you, but it's not like that's the only one we've seen since. We constantly hear about, oh, this swastika was spray painted on this random deli or this and that. And sometimes we find out that, it's not a hate crime. It's somebody that just wants attention. So yeah, take us through your process and inspiration for writing this.
Yeah, well, let me kind of OCD. Let me adjust. Okay, that
yes, I love it.
The book is actually on my shelf. This is one of my offices, but and I'm very OCD, a personal weakness. But anyway, so the inspiration for the book Hate Crime Hoax actually came about just in personal day-to-day life. I was a graduate student in Chicago, and I was active in kind of that urban student community. And we kept seeing what at the time I was pretty conventionally liberal, and I still am when it comes to women's rights and gay rights, that kind of thing. But I was in the grad student community, and we kept seeing what looked like these terrible hate crimes and what were universally billed that way. I mean, Velvet Ultra Lounge, which was a popular club in the city, very bi-friendly.
This is in Chicago?
Yeah, this is in Chicago. This is actually in one of the very inner suburbs, like Evanston. But the business was burnt to the ground, and there were these sort of terrible anti-gay slurs written through like the rubble. And this was one of 4 incidents like this within a period of a couple of years. I mean, Derek Cockaline, in around 2013, a University of Chicago student leader claimed that someone hacked his Facebook page and threatened him with violent rape, while at the same time, calling him gay and all this sort of thing. It was a pretty ugly story at the front page of the Tribune. Up the road at Wisconsin Parkside, which is in like Kenosha, like the upper suburbs, someone claimed that there had been lists of death threats literally nailed up around the campus, listing all of the black students on campus and saying, KKK, we're going to kill you N-words. There were nooses found on campus. And then this just went on and on. There was another incident at Michigan Tech where a white frat guy allegedly threatened to shoot all the black people on campus. So reading the paper, each of these stories went on for about a week, obviously. So you'd see one of these every couple of weeks. And what struck me at the end of this, getting to the point, is that they all turned out to be fakes. Like the Velvet Ultra Lounge situation was literally a club owner that owed people a lot of money, which, we always want to do in Chicago. I don't obviously know who every one of the creditors was, but he set his own club on fire. And this was...
Wow.
We found this out. It was just a really sleazy story. Like, his boy was caught in a separate DUI case in another state and ended up, I think women were involved as well, and ended up like going state's evidence and saying that his friend had burnt down his business. And the IRS and so on got involved. And it turned out the guy responsible, the club owner, actually went to jail for a couple of years for insurance fraud, falsifying the serious hate incident, so on. The Cockaline guy turned out to have sent the threats to himself. The FBI actually got involved in that case and spent like weeks chasing down all the IP addresses used. I assume he probably had a ghoster or a Tor or something like that. In this Wisconsin Parkside case, it turned out that the girl who put up the lists of threats was a black student leader. And they actually identified her because a lot of these people had sort of African-American, non-traditional names, and her name was the only one on the list that was spelled correctly. So they went through and they looked for who had the right name and maybe address or whatever. It was only her. So they put her in an interrogation room and she cracked. But these were 4 of these national, if not international, cases within a year. And I became curious about how often this happens. Because, I mean, obviously, we're in a position in America right now where both whites and minorities whine a lot about race. There are all these high-profile stories. Like, how many are real? Like when Brother Jussie says, 2 guys came out of an alleyway and they told me they knew me from Empire, but they were these
Nobody's
giant
recognizing him.
Yeah, he's not even the lead in the show. But I mean, beyond that, like when he's like, these were these redneck fighting men, but they knew me. It's like, no, they didn't, bro. Like that Empire is not #1 among deep rural Trump supporters. Like this is just BS. But I mean, when you see these stories, I wondered how many of them were real, how many of them were fake. And the short form is that I wrote a book about this. So like Hate Crime Hoax is a legitimate book. The data set that underlies it is still available if you contact me. I'm Wilfred Reilly online. That'll take you to a website, university, Facebook, Twitter. But I put together the book and I found that within a pretty concentrated period, say about 5 years, it extends beyond that for classic cases, I was able to put together an original data set of more than 500 of these incidents that took place.
Whoa.
And to put that in context, obviously most hate crimes are real. If you claim that anti-feminist ex-boyfriend attacked you or you were beaten up outside a tough black club or a biker bar at midnight, like that was the thing that happened. But I mean, there are only about 7,000 hate crimes in a typical year, and only about 1/10 of them are widely reported enough for me to ethically include them in a book like this one. So you're talking about over 5-6 years, maybe 700 a year, and there are 500 or 600 that turned out flamboyantly to be fakes. That's pretty remarkable. So that's the basis of Hate Crime Hoax. And I mean, just off the head, most people could list quite a few of these. I mean, Jussie Smollett, Covington Catholic, although that might be more a hate incident. Erica Thomas, the congresswoman that claimed she was assaulted in a grocery store. Yasmin Saweed, kind of the torn hijab on the New York 6 train. I was just a young Muslim woman, in quotes. Duke Lacrosse going back a while, Goucher College, Drake Air Force Academy, where they had a general come to campus and make this presidential quality speech about hate. Then it turned out it was all a fake. Kansas State, where these luxury late model cars for black students were getting hit with this racist graffiti. All of these and a bunch of other cases. I mean, Parkside with the nooses, Kean College with the death threats, that turned out basically just to be fakes. So the question is, we're not saying this is all cases, but coming from kind of a center-right perspective, or even just a policing perspective, why is this happening? Why are there hundreds or thousands of these fakes within the measurable recent past? And that's just data, sort of. That's not something that's really controversial.
What do you think folks get out of, I'm sure you've spent a lot of time looking into the mentality of the people who do this. What do you think they get, or they think they're going to get out of? They think they're going to pull. They probably think, okay, I'm going to pull this off. I'm going to get sympathy. But is there anything deeper there that you can that you've been able to be okay, well, what do they get out of it? To the the random person just looking on, it's what are they thinking? What if they get caught and then they look insane? But I mean, what do they think they're going to get out of it?
Yeah, it's by the way, I will say I clicked on the comments and the first one I saw is this woman smoking devil's lettuce. So I mean, I assume it's a fellow from or something joking. Devil's lettuce. Anyway, devil's lettuce. In terms of the motivations behind something like this, I think there are two levels. The first is that crime in general tends to be kind of tawdry and stupid. Two guys get in a fight. An actual hate crime might be a racial incident at a bar. And there are some motivations that are at that same low level in this sector. I mean, like the Chicago nightclub owner that set his business on fire. I mean, that's just done to get insurance money. You have creditors. It's something that'll be sympathetic to people. Your business ran a lot of gay events, so that's why you do that. But I think at a deeper level, we are rewarding victimization right now in the United States. I mean, there's absolutely no doubt about this. And it's gotten to the point where you see a fairly large number of white people, for example, pretending to be black. There have been 5 or 6 of these professor scandals recently. The Professor Krug scandal, the Rachel Dolezal scandal, where these people that had tenure jobs just suddenly admitted, oh yeah, I've been white for 25 years. And I've been doing this for the obvious reasons, affirmative action. I can speak more open socially. Even Elizabeth Warren, this has been really downplayed because it turned out she was 128th or whatever Indian.
Right.
But I mean, she listed herself as a Native American woman on a grip of occasions. She's in the cookbook Powwow Chow, which a partner once bought me as a joke because I'm part Indian. Hers was Great Plains crab dip or some such horseshit.
Wow.
It was the most waspy imaginable thing, but then it was sort of then this is how I put my unique native spin on it as an Indian woman. So, I mean, we've seen this a great deal lately. There are rewards, freer speech, if nothing else, attached to quote-unquote victim status. So one of the things you notice with these fake hate incidents is that a huge, huge number of them, probably a majority, take place on college or university campuses. So that's something that can't be minimized. And I mean, I think part of that is the reaction will be positive. In a lot of these cases, you've seen the University of Missouri, for example, someone will say something that's just extraordinarily questionable. I can't afford graduate student health insurance, which is usually $100 a year. Or the university president hit me with a car. Just these incredibly dubious things. Someone wrote a swastika in human crap on the wall of a mostly black dorm. Things that a sane person would immediately.
That takes talent. I mean, if someone's going to take their own poop and take the time, I don't know.
Yeah, and one of the things about that's so interesting is even if that happened, real questions come to mind. How do you know that's targeting black people and not Jews, first of all? How do you know that's designed to show that you like Nazis? I mean, if someone drew a picture of me in crap, I wouldn't necessarily think that was an indicator that they were a huge Will Reilly fan. I would think, in fact, it was an indicator they were a lunatic, and I didn't really have any idea what their motivations were. But when these things were said, I think the deeper point is there wasn't a great deal of controversy. I mean, there was immediate sympathetic national coverage. I mean, many of those student leaders went directly into the Fortune 500 business and trading floor world. So I think people are very aware And it's important to break down again how dishonest this was. I mean, the student body president at one point said, the Ku Klux Klan has been spotted on campus. And I am the direct liaison for the National Guard. I don't know if, I mean, I'm in college in the Upper South. You know, I'm a former athlete, although not a football player, and an SEC sports fan. Like, I follow this whole thing. And they were saying crap like the Klan is on campus and we are liaising with the U.S. military. And the U.S. military said, no, you're not. You know, when we do an op, if we're going to war against the KKK faction, we're not talking to the student body president. Like, we've got National Guard units in that state. And all this just directly under the rug. That kid went on to, as I understand, a successful business career. No hate even for him. But people understand that if you do this in the academic sector, it's very, very unlikely you're going to face criminal charges. It's very, very unlikely that this is even going to be uncovered. So that has to be a motivator. If you're constantly told that racism and classism and sexism is everywhere, and in fact, you're on a typical college campus where most people are focused on smoking weed and getting laid and playing Frisbee, you don't see much of this. And you might say, well, as the leader of, you know, the pansexual pro-Palestinian student alliance, I might have to go out there and make some of this happen. And we've seen that over and over and over again, in all honesty.
It's funny that you say that the majority of these cases happen on college campuses, because it does seem just kind of immature to me. Like, I remember, like, as a kid riding the bus and I would see like a swastika, or like you see all sorts of stuff carved into the back, like the cheap bus leather seats. And it's just, I think, you know, and you see that, I didn't think anything of it. You're just like, oh yeah, kids are doing this to be shocking. They may not know like what it means. It's just like with anything else, like those dumb S's that people carved into everything or drew out. Obviously, it's not like, you know, hate crime. It's not like a symbol of hate, but it does seem like kind of an immature move. And it's just, yeah, we've been rewarding victimization. It's like, oh, if you've had a bad day, yeah, make it about your boyfriend just broke up with you. Make it about your race. Don't make it that you're like a shitty person or you're a bad student, or maybe the real factor is going on. If you can get some attention and make it about your race or whatever. But of course I can't say that because I'm a white person. So
no, but I mean, it's well, you're a woman though. You have, you have that level of oppression.
Oh, right.
I don't know. If you could be Jewish or bisexual or something. Who's to say? You could be more. You could really create your own oppressed world.
That's so true. A couple drinks and I'm bisexual. I'm right there.
Fair enough. But no, like I think a lot of people like. This is something I've noticed in kind of urban. I'm getting up near 40, so I won't say young anymore, but like up middle class.
You're still young.
Yeah, I'm going to be around for a while. But no, I mean, I do notice that a lot more people are creating these sort of identities. Like when I think about the people that are dating, like my slightly younger friends and mentees and so on, like virtually all of them are bi, which isn't unusual. I mean, that's been the case for a while. But I mean, like, it would be beyond that. It's like, oh, I'm not a white woman. You have to understand. I am a non-binary, bisexual, Jewish, or, you know, Mina or whatever, American person of size. It's like all this different stuff. I think I got non-binary in there. But so you don't have to accept kind of the oppressor label. And if you are in any of those categories, of course, you could be the victim of, you know, anti-non-binary violence or something like that. And a substantial number of the cases in Hoax involved things like that. They weren't whites and blacks beating each other up or black people being intimidated with the burning cross. It was, well, you know, as a Muslim polyamorous student, I experienced this on campus. Or as what was the one at Oberlin? As a transgender, you know, residents association leader, I experienced this. So I do think you'll see a smaller and smaller number of people that just come out and say, like, I am a mentally well-adjusted upper middle class white person on a college campus in the near future. And this goes even to like when people say I'm neuroatypical. Like, I mean, that obviously doesn't mean you're, you know, mentally disabled. What it means, so what you're saying is like I have ADD or something like that. Like I probably have ADD. I
for sure do. I took the test. I remember I like passed with flying colors. Like they were like, yeah, take this test. And I was like, oh shoot. It was like you had to get like, I forget what it was, like the score, and that was like if it landed in the 20s or something, and I was like in the 40s. But I don't like identifying with that. I don't being like, hi, how are you? Like I think I have ADD. It's like I was prescribed Adderall. I took it for a few years, and I'm like, you know what? I'd like to be able to survive without pills. Or, you know what I mean? Like I didn't want to become dependent on it. I'm like, why don't I just learn how to focus the best I can and not? I mean, and also Adderall makes you a little nutty, and people have, I've never done coke, but they say it's similar to coke. It makes you manic. It makes you like, there's like a come down from it, which I definitely do agree with. So I just never found it attractive to identify by like any kind of a victim status. I just feel like you need to work for your points, right? And like work to be respected through your accomplishments, not just who you're banging or what your genitals are or the color of your skin. I don't know. Why do you think, and this is a question that was in the chat, why do you think that people keep falling for these hoaxes?
I don't think people do. By the way, that's an excellent. Just as a comment on that last thing, like I think that basically there's a hesitation on the part of most polite people, and this actually gets into your next question as well, to say a lot of this expert knowledge, quote unquote, is just bullshit. But a great deal of it is. I mean, if you are a smart citizen that reads books and then went to college for a couple of years, you might not know what a nuclear physicist knows. You're not going to be building rockets. But in terms of like someone with a master's degree in sociology, like you basically have that same type of information. Like some people are racist and some people aren't. Oh, thanks, Doc. You know, so
Right.
when you look at the psychopharma complex in the USA, when I talk to good buddies from China and France and other Nigeria, other powerful countries, Saudi Arabia, you might dislike any of those four countries. I think they're all at least as amoral as we are, but they obviously have books over there. And they have a completely different approach to therapy. Like if you went to the doctor and said, I am a young man and I'm having trouble sitting still, they would probably say, well, go run 5 laps every day. It would be very different from, why don't you take this speed? And we tend to minimize what these drugs are. Like Adderall is just meth. Like every time I say that on
Really?
I get into some argument, people are like, well, technically, no, it's dextromethamphetamine, not anthromethamphetamine or whatever.
There is meth in there. Yeah.
Just read the side of the bottle. It says amphetamine salts. I mean, so it's
True.
This sort of thing that we're giving to kids. Like now they're moving this to girls as well. So it's like 6-year-old girls are, taking their speed and then
it's
going
so
like
shocking.
Class in
it's
school.
So
like
sad. Like I used to work at an all boys prep school on the Upper East Side. This was like years ago. I worked in admissions, but sometimes I'd have to cover for the receptionist at the front desk. And like you see everything and it's fun. You can people watch. But like the amount of kids, like there were not a ton, but it was a few to maybe really take notice. Like these kids coming down. It was K through 12, so they were definitely like maybe middle school, like young high school, coming down, like already jittering, but coming to the front desk. Like, did my mom drop off my Adderall? And I was on it myself at the time. And I was only on like 10 milligrams, which is the least you could be on. And it was extended release, which is like over an 8-hour period. And it was pretty subtle. And I was like, I'm not going to jack myself up. Like, I'm not going to. A lot of people on Adderall, like eventually over time, like they increase their prescription. But this kid was on like 50 or 60 milligrams. And I'm like, he's a kid. And I was like, this poor baby, becoming chemical dependent or thinking like he can't, I don't know, survive the day or focus at all without this stuff. And then all the negative effects. I don't know, my heart was breaking because this kid was like already looked a little jacked up as he was coming to pick it up.
Yeah, man, it's messed up. Like people get mad when you say this, but there's no empirical difference between that and having a coke habit. Like if you look at like a gram of just KO is, I mean, what, it's usually 20% pure. So it's, how many milligrams would that be? I mean, like 100, maybe 200. I mean, if you're taking 250 milligram pills of Adderall daily, the impact of that, I mean, that's about up there with doing a G of coke every day. That's that amount of stimulant in your body. So people can like that or dislike that in the context of maybe some kids need it, but you can't help but notice we're giving the gram of coke a day to a hell of a lot more people than the Russians or the Chinese or the French. And obviously it has a problem. And when you look at people's addictive personalities, like sleeping with 16 strangers on Tinder or binge watching entire episodes of shows and not leaving the house, like you have to wonder, like, when did that get started? When did that lack of self-control begin? Like, was that your mom and dad giving you everything you wanted, like in every middle-class family starting at age 5, plus you being on speed? Like, kind of helped.
For someone who was formerly slutty, for me personally, it was like to fill a void, and like I wasn't building up my own like self-confidence, and like yeah, maybe it was like something that my parents didn't really do a good enough job with. But yeah, the answer is definitely not to become right. All this stuff is so habit forming, and it's like It's just a mistake giving it to kids, I think.
True. And like for example, like I lean right on a lot of things, but I'm very pro sex. I mean, I've slept, I don't keep count because I'm an adult, but I mean,
yeah, you gotta keep count.
Hundreds of people. I mean, sex, no, I don't have like a scroll, like a notch.
Yeah, we don't see the scroll.
I'm in a committed relationship now. And I mean, again, like my partner would identify as bisexual. Like most people are adult with sexuality now, which I think is like on the right, there's a lot of discomfort with that. But like I remember reading an article of Miss Magazine from like 1971, just at a feminist.
Like, yeah, I used to subscribe to Ms. Magazine. Ugh.
But the issue with this though is that they asked a bunch of adult businessmen if they knew what a clitoris was, and the answer was like 16%. So, and this is the 70s. This is the same year where, like, as a woman, you couldn't get a checking account without your husband co-signing. So, I think we make fun of modern hypersexuality, but like guys knowing how to go down and people not getting married at 18, those are good things. But I mean, the point that I was making about this, though, I definitely think a lot of as long as you're cool with what it is, like having sex with people that are also pretty good friends of yours that you like is totally healthy. But a lot of this stuff, like, I'm going to have doggy style sex in a club bathroom and it will fulfill me. Like the idea that was pitched to many of my female friends, like tough feminist urban girls, like, this is what you need to be. You don't need no husband, no kids.
Have sex with no emotion. And then you do it and you're like, but I have emotion. Yeah.
Be like them. Like a lot of the women that did that, you know, sex is a natural function, but so is going to the bathroom. Like a lot of men and women felt frankly used by one another in a public restroom kind of way when I knew people in that urban hookup scene. So the idea like this is going to empower you, especially as a woman, where there are a lot more risks like pregnancy, sexual violence. Like I don't know a single tough city woman that feels really empowered by sleeping with 100 dudes. I know some guys that feel empowered by sleeping with 100 women, and they might be more honest with you as a woman. But even the guys I know, like when guys look back on like their dog phase, they're like, yeah, that was a lot of fun, but I also didn't get married until I was 32. And, you know, I have to be honest with my partner about this STD. Like,
yeah, it's fleeting. Like that you can feel some sort of like, I don't know, like accomplishment from it. It's like, it's the chase. It's like there is something about it that's like, yeah, like you feel like you've conquered, you know, it's like just getting your numbers up. There's something really cool about like, it's feeling desired. Like that is a drug, but you have to keep getting it because then it's like you leave the guy's place and you're like, ugh, well now it's like, I've just slept with somebody who like, I kind of barely liked. And now where am I? It's like, and ultimately the majority of people are going to want to get to a place where they want to find a good partner. And it's like, okay, you look back on your slutty years and you're like, that was a little bit of a waste of time. Like I could have been a lot more discerning and found that good partner sooner, you know? But,
yeah, I mean, it also depends. Like, I think that a lot of like people like having really graphic, intense sex with other people that they know and like that are their friends or that they just met to prove they're that beautiful and attractive and so on. I will say, I mean, not mocking the different hunting gathering on either side, but it's a little easier as a woman. Like, you're like, I seduced a good-looking man. Like, okay. I mean, but like for my gay buddy. Yeah. No, I mean, for my gay buddies, they've all put up Wilt Chamberlain numbers, and it's because you're talking to another man. Like, hey, want to go have sex in the bathroom? Yeah, bro. You know, and that's it. That's the whole exchange. But no, I mean, there obviously is an element of accomplishment, of excitement to that. And things like sex in public or sex with people from different places, you learn about, you date for a while. But again, there's an element of just like knowing what it is. Like if you assume that this is going to give you more fulfillment long term than what it replaced, like the idea of relationships or even the traditional idea of sort of female power, like you control your sexuality totally and see if guys respond to that, or you do other things like you work in the world alongside guys and beat them most of the time. If you think that this drugs, just hookup culture, so on, are a replacement for that, I think that's going to lead to a lot of depressed people. Like I know a lot of people that are also like 36, 37 that are just chilling at the crib with a cat. This is men and women that are very depressed by their life choices, like recovering from addictions. Yeah. I'm actually going to move on because I know a lot of people are happy too. And I like urban scene culture, but I mean, a lot of people didn't really get out of it. And I guess this is my last line. What you wonder is what they're going to tell the next generation. Mm-hmm. Like if they're still in clubs, like if you're 36 and you're still hip hop or goth or whatever, and this is your way. Like, are you going to tell the next generation the same thing? Like, you don't need that conventional bullshit, Jimmy. Like, it's problematic because very often people do. Like, you do need a job, a wife or a husband, if that's what you want. And so on down the line. Money and the banks, you don't die alone. All those things exist for a reason.
Yeah. And it's like, it almost, for me, I feel like my experience with feminism was like, okay, like it's almost like they're trying to convince me as a woman to not have a support system. Like, your family is like, you should be striving for, like, this is your team. These are the people that are going to be there for you, that like pick you up when you're down, help you if you need money or whatever, just like you're depressed, like people that have your back. And you're not going to get that by just like being alone, like banging random people. You're just not, it should be made. And I think it's starting to happen now. Conservative values being made cool again. Like, yeah, like have a family, pick a good one instead of, just like, I don't know, living for the moment, right? Like delayed gratification. All right. So we're tying this back in with the fake hoaxes. Do you think that the fake hoaxes is kind of like the new high, the new addiction, the new like quick fix for attention?
Well, I think it's one example of it. I don't think there are necessarily a lot of people that are like, hey, let's not do blow and have sex tonight. Let's go pretend we're the Klan, But I think that I think it ties together. There are a lot of things here. One is the desire for fairly instant gratification. One is the rewarding of victimization. I think that's the big one. Another is just almost a supply and demand question. Like, what's the level of actual racism that exists at a modern Big Ten or Ivy League university? And the answer is, and again, this is one of those things like Adderall is speed that's just obvious, but that's very controversial. The answer is almost none. Like, if you went there and you give an anonymous survey to those kids and you asked, like, would you have sex with an attractive person of an opposite race or different race, there are no opposites, but that's traditionally been an enemy of your own group, Asians for Westerners and so on, 99.9% would say yes. It would be considered utterly cliche and corny to be a traditional black or white or whatever nationalist. They're all going to work for Goldman together. So in this absence, you're in a weird situation where that's the case, but you're constantly being told this, like Howard Zinn, Ibram Kendi, Robin DiAngelo stuff. White supremacy is everywhere. I actually did an appearance on Fox the other day. And I mean, it's fun to be in like the box on Fox or NBC sometimes, just like screaming it at somebody else. Yeah, I'm the center-right black guy for this show. But like the topic was, is yoga white supremacy?
Oh my God.
No, but it was like yoga was learned from the upper classes of East Asia, but now whites and the black business elite are, taking this over. Despite the focus on this kind of utter nonsense, there's almost no traditional racism. Even those audit studies that look at if you go in and you're a woman or you're Hispanic and you apply for a very bro job, will you be rejected? The rate used to be 100%. It's now like 7%. I mean, there's very, very little conventional, no, I wouldn't sleep with them racism. So you have that distinction between nothing and constant hyperbole. Like, in fact, the racism is white people existing. So I think that people sometimes feel a bit unconvinced by the white people existing explanation. And so they decide to generate some conventional racism. I mean, I would say that whenever I see an invocation, this is me personally, I mean, it's not advice for the police detectives or something, but whenever I see like an invocation of the old wars between blacks and whites and natives, like whenever I see like a swastika or a Klan robe, a noose, my immediate reaction is that's a fake. Like, there's still an obnoxious, active alt-right, I mean, like the right of Groyper movement in society, the different frog and toad images online, Amrin and V-Dare and all that. Like, that's probably 1 in 20 young men. It's a real thing. The manosphere with Roosh V and all that stuff. But that's very different from like the old school KKK. So if I see someone saying, I saw 4 big white guys in hoods with like handlebar mustaches outside my dorm, it's just like, I know that's a lie.
They're going to come to your community college. Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, no, but real talk. Like, why are they the Air Force Academy? Like, how many big servicemen do you have standing around the perimeter to stop pranks and shit? Like, what are the chances that 7 KKK members snuck through, like, our country's warriors, into the dorm, committed this act, like drew a swastika and feces on the wall, and then like escaped, like robes and all. And no one, like none of the tough black airmen noticed. The odds of that are extraordinarily low. And I think most people at some level know that.
Yeah, we got super chat is a big part of the hoax culture because the media so wants it to be true. With a justice and mole, why would two random Trump people be in Chicago at 2 a.m. to attack him? How obvious was this?
Yeah. As a trigonometry reference, I felt tempted to yell, like, let's get some Jussie Smollett's in the chat. But that I think is exactly right. And this actually gets into a very important point. So like your commenter's comment is on point. I mean, yes is the answer. Media plays a major role in a lot of these political and racial divisions in our society, and it's pretty important to focus on this. And this goes at two levels. One is that the constant coverage of really atypical stuff, like white on black crime. And I'll say, right, as a black guy who's cool with that, like there's not a lot of black on white crime either. I mean, the person most likely to kill you is your ex-wife. So like the internet tends, literally, but the internet tends to focus on these obscure cases. There is 5 or more times as much black on white as white on black crime. There are also about 5 times as many white people, but 70% of crime for everyone is intra-racial, as you would say. But like white on black crime, like tough whites attacking working class black guys for no reason almost never happens. So a lot of the storylines that we see in the mass media, like white police violence against black men, are based on a tiny number of incidents and exist only because they're repeated over and over and over again. So, I mean, the total number of unarmed black men killed by police last year, just so people have that ammunition, was 18. That's not even wildly disproportionate. The total number of unarmed men killed by police was under 100. It was an extraordinarily small number of incidents. You could argue that is versus 12 in Britain, if that was a figure for last year or something like that. But again, bear in mind, there's 60 million police stop incidents. We're a gun-using society. It's really not a major national problem, without minimizing, the way Daniel Shaver's family or George Floyd's or something would feel. But the reason we think this is a problem is that every case, certainly if it's a white on black case, is going to receive weeks of coverage. So the presentation is going to be, well, it can't just be, George Floyd and Daniel Shaver and Jacob Blake and so on. That's got to be the tip of a giant iceberg. No, that's all the ice. That's every case, especially the black cases. Like, that's all that happened. It's 18 dudes. So yeah, the media plays a major role. And when you look at what people think, like, I am a follower of Skeptic Research Center, and I encourage people to get into not so much the SJW left, certainly the alt-right, any of that, but that heterodox intellectual dark web where you have these scientists sitting around sipping black coffee actually looking at these issues. Skeptic Research Center is a good example of this. They did this, and they found that the typical left-winger thinks that about 10,000 unarmed black people are killed every year by the police. And not even to exaggerate that, it was 35% thought that the number was between 1,000 and 10,000, or it was at least 1,000, or it was about 1,000. Another 14 or 15% thought it was about 10,000. Then you had 7% that thought it was more than that. This is just the absolutely standard, very liberal category. It's just leftists in society. So all of this is totally caused by the constant media reporting on what are in many cases non-issues. And last point, I don't think people fall for it, really. I think when I went to the barbershop and it was a mix of, Chicago or Louisville, like black, white, Irish, Italian. I mean, I guess those are Caucasian, but like just guys talking. I think everyone thought it was bullshit. Like, nobody believed that this frail TV actor fought off 3 tough rednecks or 2 tough rednecks with a chicken sub. It just didn't happen. But nobody wanted to say that because you didn't want to be called out as a racist. So I think, again, there's a disconnect where people feel like they're isolated when they say things like, I have you use whatever pronouns you want, but I have some issues with men competing against women in combat sports. Like, that would feel like an edgy position. But then you actually look at the surveys, and like 99% of women, given the structure of the question, are probably going to agree with that. So again, you're not alone. Don't let people gaslight you. And yeah, the media plays a huge role here.
What do you think of oh, I'm getting this crazy echo. Okay. What do you think of the Nancy Mace home vandalization with the Antifa symbols? This is something that happened fairly recently. Yeah, like maybe last week or so. Let me pull up the article here. Did you hear about this at all, Wilfred?
Yeah, I mean, my immediate reaction is, hey, the right can do this too. But I mean, I will say, what I always say in these cases is that you should let the police do their job. Like, what the police are good at is doing police work. By which I mean, I actually don't think the police should be roaming through neighborhoods unless you really have a homicide problem, just stopping and frisking men at random. Yeah, I understand why they do that, city money, but I don't think sitting by the road like a lion in a copse of bushes waiting for me to drive by 5 miles over the speed limit is all that useful. But when someone reports a rape or a burglary and the police start investigating, they're quite good at that. They're putting detectives on it as well as the uniformed guys. Give them a week and see what happens. That is excellent advice in almost every case. So in this case, give them a week, see what happens. That said, I view it as kind of suspicious that this person is running for political office, that the Antifa bandits targeted only the easily washable concrete.
Yes.
Yeah, like
yes, I love
the house,
that's my favorite point.
The big white wall behind them. Like, so this is starting to happen more and more often on the right. Let the cops work, let them figure it out.
That was my favorite observation. I'm like, wow, somebody was very polite and only didn't spray paint her white stairs, didn't spray paint, any of the the bars leading up, or it's like every place where there's spray paint is going to be easy to wash or cover up.
And just in like one of those things that tells you about, you can learn a lot about someone's personality or even sexual tastes from their other behavior. Not necessarily saying all of that here, but the steps are each one's got its own neat word written on it.
Very tidy, almost feminine handwriting.
None of the paint sprawls onto the next step and gets it dirty. Come on. I think I definitely have my suspicions about what happened. Like predatory female, potential Republican office holder gets this exact graffiti. But it's all remains to be seen. This is, by the way, this is actually an important point from a social science standpoint. A lot of these cases are, and again, I mean, in this case, I have no idea what the person's political, sexual, etc. tastes are, but I do think you can read a lot about someone by what happens in situations like this, by what their art looks like, and I definitely have my suspicions here. I'll be watching it. But in terms of a lot of these cases, something that should be kept in mind is that most of them are never solved. So one of the comments about hoax was like, well, okay, Reilly, there are 700 famous cases a year, but you got 500 over what? They'll exaggerate a little and say a decade. What percentage is that? 10, 5? And that's a reasonably valid critique, but the assumption there is that all of the other cases were somehow proven to be real. And that's absolutely not true. Like the conviction rate in hate crime cases, when I put together a set of data looking at California a few years back, is about 6%. So the typical hate crime case, which is wildly unusual, by the way, if you compare that to robbery or murder or even sexual violence cases. So the typical hate crime case would be someone spray painting, an incorrectly drawn swastika on the wall of a suburban family's garage. And that, by the way, is also a tell when they don't get the swastika right. Like a Nazi probably knows what a swastika looks like for all the many flaws of the Nazi population. But I mean, that would be a typical case. And so the question then becomes, is that an actual hate criminal? Is that a fraternity guy doing some kind of initiation prank, possibly for a Black or Jewish fraternity? Is that a hoax? Is that the homeowner going for insurance money? And very often the answer is just, we don't know. We end up not knowing in the end.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think that I'm trying to, I don't know where this echo's coming from. If the media is kind of encouraging all of this, do you feel like the media also encourages, I want to know what do you think are the links between actual hate speech and free speech? Do you feel like we should be, censoring perceived hate speech?
Well, first of all, I don't think that there is such a thing as hate speech. I mean, the Supreme Court has already looked at a whole bunch of these cases where and I am a Black dude, but if I say my nigga, or if I insult someone's mother or something like that, is that provocation for them to start a physical fight with me? I mean, there are a dozen cases on point saying no. Private business has substantial control over their content, but there is, legally speaking, no such thing as hate speech. I will note that there are multiple regulations on speech that exist across most civilized countries. and that people often seem to almost forget are in place. So, I mean, there is a ban on actual obscenity, like depictions of sex with children, of animals in some cases, necrophilia. I mean, we don't need to break every element down, but there are things that are considered obscene. You know, you go beyond that to libel and slander. If you say something that's defamatory about someone and that's provably false, that is against the law. Fraud, where you tell a lie to gain something, if you're looking at felony fraud, more than $500 in value, is against the law. And I mean, then finally you'd come to what's sometimes referred to as fire in a crowded theater speech. And that actually is an incorrect description of it. But if you say something that's imminent incitement to commit an actual crime, like if Donald Trump or Bernie Sanders said, I want you to go shoot up the next congressional baseball game, you know, that would be against the law. So I think that those restrictions, some of which already go pretty far, like the obscenity one, the under 18 and animals would ban like Japanese hentai comic books in many cases. Like there have been legal cases around that. So that's not a small limit. I mean, the same thing with any libel. Would calling an actress a slut, using some of the terms that came up earlier, would that be
or
libel?
a vice president? No.
No, actually, but like that came up. What was it? Amazon banned the sale of shirts that they're Joe and the Ho t-shirts, basically. The shirts showing Joe and Kamala Harris, and it's like Joe with the $sign on his shirt, and then it's Joe and the Ho because Kamala Harris allegedly had extramarital affairs. Like, you can't sell those on most mainstream platforms, and like Harris has apparently threatened a libel suit. So there are all kind of restrictions on speech. It's just that one of the restrictions isn't saying things people dislike or using racial insults in the title of books or something like that. So my position on hate speech is that it doesn't exist. The actual question, I guess, here is, to what extent should private companies be able to go beyond the 4 core points of speech law to regulate content? And I actually think that's an interesting question. But I think it's a question that's different from the problem, which is that Facebook and Twitter and so on have wildly ambiguous codes of conduct, so they don't tell you what you're not supposed to do. Like, I have about 35,000 Twitter followers. I'm at WillDuBeast630. There's some underscores in there, you'll find me. But I mean, like, I have a bunch of Twitter followers, but I've gotten Twitter strikes, and they won't tell you why. That's the wildest thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
my Instagram was straight up taken down. They didn't tell me why. There was like no warning. Yeah. And it's like you don't really know. It never came back. I had to make a new one. But yeah, same exact thing. They don't tell you. You only know after the fact.
It's so totally selective. Like, you can absolutely tell it's up. Like, once you get to the level of fame we're both at, but I mean, like, once you get to be like a prominent person, much less, you know, like you're Michael Jordan or something.
WillDuBeast.
Oh, boom.
Everybody follow him.
Yeah. But if you're into a mix of kind of cent-right politics and shit posting, otherwise you'll be really annoyed. But basically, oh, okay, that's a promoted tweet. I was going to say, I didn't post that yet.
Oh, yeah, you're like, I don't like planking. Do fasting.
Planking.
Blocking, do fasting. There we go.
Boom, do it. Anyway, but I think the issue with social media, though, in all seriousness, is the total ambiguity of the terms of service. So the social media sites will very frequently say things like, we don't censor, we don't remove, but it's sort of like 1984 history. I mean, if you go back through, I recently went back through, because I'm an internet kid, I've been on the internet since like 2000. I mean, it's come up through its weird dark days to today. But I mean, like, a lot of the people I used to argue with on social media when I first turned on to social media, from Milo Yiannopoulos to Louis Farrakhan and Cop Block over on the left, Chapo Trap House, the whole dirtbag left, like Laura Loomer, Alex Jones, the whole hard conspiracy right, the alt-right, Jared Taylor, all gone. You can like or dislike those people, but something like 20% of the content pages on, say, Twitter were just wiped. They're gone. Like, at Nero is just a blank page with like his face. And no, his face is gone as of last year. Donald Trump is gone. So you have to have some standard for censoring the president. I think that's where I'm going to end this at. Like, nobody knows what the rules are. Actually, last anecdote, like I said, I lean left when it comes to gay rights, women's rights, whatever. And I was the manager of a gay rights page, Chicago Pride, for a while. Now, I'm not gay, and I moved right, so I gave it to my gay buddy, like, okay. But like when I was managing, like we posted all kind of content. Like at one point, someone asked if we could advertise an actual sex party on the page. We're like, okay, we're not going to go probably.
Yeah.
But like none of that was ever an issue. Like rate your favorite sexual experience wasn't an issue. And we one day posted a story from some conservative outlet, it's like the Daily Wire, that had a bare nipple in it. Like, is this appropriate for kids? And the next day, we got a strike. It was like multiple people have reported this image for obscenity.
Wow.
So the story was taken down and we were shut down for a day because of this nipple posting. You know, so it's...
Yeah, was it the nipple or was it the Daily Wire that was obscene to them?
Daily Wire, but the thing is that because it was the Daily Wire's nipple, you know, there was this critique. And the whole thing was ridiculous. I think the nipple was only visible through a shirt or something. We still had to remove the post. But that happens all of the time. Like, again, something I often say, you're not imagining it. A bunch of these hate crime cases do turn out to be BS, and they vanish completely from the media. Similarly, it's absolutely accurate that Cop Block and the entire dirtbag left on the left and Nero and the president and the entire alt-right on the right are gone from social media. They're simply not there anymore. The question is why and how you can respond to that.
Oh, we got a good question from Row House. Do the rich see an advantage to funding groups like the SPLC that are so wealthy off of hate hoaxes? We talk about this meaningless stuff so we don't have to bring up white collar crimes. SPLC has 400 million.
Yeah, I think it goes beyond. So there are almost two different elements to that question. And again, two intelligent questions so far. The first is, are a lot of these entrenched grievance industry groups very powerful as the businesses they go up against? Yeah. Southern Poverty Law Center, they have more than 400 million. That's their well-invested this year endowment, as I understand, $470 million. Every year into the near future, they're projected to take in another 60 to 80 million. They also obviously have physical plant. They have that fortified building they're based out of. So, I mean, you're talking about something that's on par with probably not an F500, if we're being honest, but a Fortune 1000 corporation. I mean, and that's hardly alone. I mean, there's the NAACP, which does some good, actually, when it comes to integrated workers issues. I've been a member before, but which also does some nonsense, if we're being honest. And then there's the just nonsense Black civil rights groups. You know, whatever Brother Jesse is doing right now. Reverend Al is the National Action Network. Then you have the Young Lions. I mean, the 20 or 30 organized BLM chapters. I think it was BLM Global Foundation that led about a $6 billion kind of inflow initiative to Black Lives Matter over the past decade. Now, I would almost admire these young brothers, even if they're on the other team, for raising this kind of money. But it looks like some of them might have taken it. Like, I mean, there are all these guys like Hawk Newsom coming up and saying, like, I'm a local Black Lives Matter leader, and I haven't seen a dime of this money. And at the same time, there is no proof she obtained these funds illegally. But like Patrice Cullors, one of the founders of Black Lives Matter, just bought a $1.4 million mansion. And I don't believe that includes the value of the outbuildings in Topanga Canyon, which is, we all know where Topanga is. I mean, out by LA. It's one of the richest neighborhoods in the world. You know, it's 98% white, legendary party area. I mean, okay, there's an ironic contrast between Newsom standing in the Bronx hoping for some money for his 3-on-3 tournament and that. So, yes, these groups are very wealthy and no less corrupt than any other, you know.
And she had the audacity to say, like, oh, I'm making my own this is going to be generational wealth that I passed down. Like, thanks for giving me my generational wealth, BLM contributors. Oh,
Black cards matter actually would be the best t-shirt slogan there. But anyway, you know, so yeah, on the one level, yes, these groups exist. Yes, just like the unions and corporations, they can be corrupt. Now the rich thing, is the rich man distracting us? This again, I'm still left on a lot of the class and sex issues. Yes. And the rich man is not just based on one side, nor is the rich man just a man these days. I mean, the upper class, to some extent, obviously has an interest in keeping the lower class divided. Lower class is divided. Everyone that's not a bourgeois, that's not a capitalist. I think that probably both sides of the woke, anti-woke fight, and I'm like on the anti-woke side, I have a team here, but I think both are probably receiving money from large corporate interests. In terms of who's funding the anti-wokes, probably big crooked businesses of the Walmart or Chick-fil-A variety that would like to keep the public discourse away from what they're doing to the tax code. Who's funding the wokes? I would say actual foreign enemies have to be to some extent. If you look at China or the UAE, if we're over here fighting, knocking each other over the head and teaching, hieroglyphics in the schools and so on, that's going to benefit them. They have astronauts too. So, I think that both sides would be drawing in a whole bunch of funding from some pretty dubious sources, betting odds on that 100%. Anti-woke side's better. But when you're involved in these kind of debates about what should be taught in the 8th grade classroom, never forget that there are actual people ruling the world that have nuclear bombs. Yes, excellent question.
Was your time as an associate professor, did it inspire writing this book? The echoes back.
Taboo or?
No, you said you were an associate professor first before you were an author.
Oh, well, you have to write books or you'll get fired. It's like a state level university. I think they're not thrilled. They're not upset with the ones I chose to write. Again, if you are at a Southern institution or historically black college, because it's hard for a bunch of rich black guys to feel too much white guilt, or you're at a military school a la Texas A&M, or you're at a community college, it's not necessarily going to be the same woke environment you see when you see Claremont colleges on TV. So I'll definitely have students come and talk to me about this and say, well, you better represent for, the black man as well. Like, are you going to work on any charter schools in Kentucky, this kind of thing. But there's no hostility, really. But why I wrote the book, just you have to write a book. You're expected to write one every couple of years. The topic struck me as just interesting. It was the inspiration came from my time as a grad student, as I said, where this just kept happening. 4 or 5 major cases in one city and 2 years. So I was curious about how often it happened and just sort of put that together. And you could say, well, even 5 cases in one city in a year, that's not that many. But imagine the narrative that would have come up if that had been 5 police shootings. So there's a great deal of content that sort of that center right that most people naturally fall into is right about. We're right about Black Lives Matter. The number of cases every year is 20. We're right about interracial crime. There's almost none of it. I'm willing not to discuss it. But if we're going to bring it up, that's 70% on the other side of the aisle from what's being presented in the media. Merit immigration. Immigration should benefit the people that are already living in a country and working hard there. Systemic racism in most forms of this that are argued to exist doesn't. You just adjust for age and test scores and all the gaps go away. It's just a great deal of this is just BS. And the reason it's being discussed so intensely is that no one wants to discuss the actual problems that, for example, are causing some of these gaps. There's hyper high crime in black and, for that matter, poor white areas. And we've seen that crime increase the past year because we idiotically pulled back the cops due to this pretense that, the real issue is racism. No, it's not. So now we've seen murders jump by 40%. So there's a lot of value to going out there and telling the truth, which is one of my goals as an academic. And that's why I picked the topic. As for the book itself, I would prefer not to be fired. So, I'm going to keep churning out books, not churning them out, but every 2 years, probably a book plus a couple journal articles. You'll see.
I love it. Yeah. Wilfred, where other than Twitter can people find you, follow you, and purchase Hate Crime Hoax? I saw it is on Amazon. Oh, wait, we got another super chat. It snuck in from Brad Pitt. I wonder if this is the real Brad Pitt. Is the legacy media dying enough to lose this influence to divide us? Cable news and legacy TV has an average of 71. I don't know if that was percent or age viewership.
Yeah, it's down to 69 this year, but yeah, that's maybe. I think actually this is the real underlying issue when it comes to some of these cultural fights about social media. So whenever people say, well, they're banning all conservatives on social media, I want to agree on partisan lines, but then I'll say, no, they ban the entire dirtbag left too. They banned the first libertarian page. Really what they're trying to do is go after all those creators from Tim Pool to Blair White to those guys that frankly used to be on 4chan. Milo has been around for a while, to Ben Shapiro, although he's gotten a little more politically correct. But all those internet kids, left or right, that created their own content. I don't watch any of that Twitch screaming craps, but all those gamers. Was PewDiePie was the #1 media personality in the world for a
Oh
while.
God, yeah.
I can't imagine
Unfortunately.
why, but anyway, like, but no hate for the dude, but all that, like Cat Black
Yeah,
on
it's
the
anybody independent with their own fan base. That's
yeah.
threatening to them.
But no, you yourself, I mean, when we're talking about strikes on YouTube, and good redirection there, because there are like 35 of them I could have listed. But I mean, just like, that is the real target. The idea, MSNBC, and for that matter, probably Fox, as great as my business relationship with them is, would love to see YouTube be MSNBC and Fox, battling like they do on the air, with no, Blair White with 2 puppets on her hands making fun of the networks. Like, that's not a good thing for them. So that's the real issue. Yes, new creator media absolutely has the ability. When you see things like the Daily Wire on the right creating, or Tim Weiss on the left proposing something like a book publishing network, absolutely has the ability to become next gen and replace kind of these old dinosaurs. The only reason there's still a New York Times is that this incredibly corrupt billionaire, Carlos Slim, saved it. Like, it's the same thing. Washington
Wow.
Post is owned by Jeff Bezos. If you look at who owns these newspaper corporations, it's the richest, most corrupt guys in the world. And that's why they're talking about wokeness as opposed to the real issues, the impact of mass immigration on the environment that they used to talk about. So, yes, there's a chance. The problem is that there's an attempt to eliminate these people. Naomi Wolf, I always get the name wrong, but like one of the classic original feminists, who was out there now saying some things maybe on the center right, and who was putting out her new blog content, just got totally wiped from Twitter for mentioning some kind of COVID treatment or some random
Oh, that's right.
yeah,
Wow,
gone
that's
forever.
wild.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, they're apparently like Eric Trump, Don's son is on like his final strike. Like, so it's every time someone gets over that 5 million mark or whatever, you're going to see an attempt made to come for their throat. People in the edge community need to be aware of that and to stand up for these outlets, and actually to go to the websites, to actually like to send you chats, to buy content. It sounds annoying when content creators say that, but it's correct. Like, you have to, like, Ruben's doing a good thing with Locals, which again has right and left wing members. You have to create a platform that can't just be taken offline at will.
Well, yeah, that's what's so great about Rockfin, which is I don't know if it's similar to Locals. I haven't checked out Locals yet, but I just joined Rockfin, which is like, yeah, subscriber. It's basically like Netflix for creators. And I was really excited to join up with them because a lot of my YouTube content has been demonetized. I had an interview with Aubrey Huff that was basically just totally deleted because he said one thing about the jab. And now it's great. Now I have a space that I can kind of have these conversations that are not really YouTube or state approved or that are going to be censored. It's nice to see that there are places where these conversations can take place so that I'm trying not to get like permanently banned on everything, but it's good to have the option in case you want to go deep on some issues. Awesome. Wilfred, thank you so much for talking about this book. Where can people find it? Where can people follow you and keep up with your projects?
Yeah, so the book is available everywhere. One of the reasons I have some liberty to talk pretty openly about this is that Hate, Crime, Hoax and Taboo both got pretty close to #1 in the world. I think Taboo peaked at number 25 a couple weeks ago. I'm also a contributor to the book Red, White, and Black from the 1776 Unites Initiative to just blatantly plug, which again dropped #1 in the world a couple of weeks ago, edited by Bob Woodson. But you can find all of them given that performance on Amazon, Books by the Million, Books Goodreads, really anywhere fine books are sold. You can also, I mean, obviously I always encourage, just patronizing your local coffee shop or bookstore or whatever. I mean, most of those that don't just lean in one ideological direction will have the book. So if at all possible, go there, cop that for $19. I mean, that's the best way to do anything like that. And where can I be found? If you just Google Wilfred Reilly, it's WILFRED REILLY. The first 3 hits are like my Twitter, my personal Facebook page, and the website I'm on for KSU. So, I mean, those would be obviously the easiest routes to contact me. I think my email's on my website. So by all means, reach out and get in touch.
Awesome. Wilfred, thank you so much for coming on the pod. This is a great discussion, great interview. Thank you, chat, for all your questions and super chats. And yeah, this was a great discussion. Thank you so much. I'll talk to you soon, Wilfred.
All right. Thanks a lot. Have a good day.
You too. Bye. Bye.